we are going to bring on another familiar face, current Congressman Jimmy Panetta, who is going to moderate a panel of experts from the USDA and help us learn a little bit more about those agencies that Secretary Vilsack was so excited about. And just a quick little backdrop for Congressman Panetta, if just in case anyone doesn't know. I think it's fair to say we can accuse him of being dedicated to public service, and he proudly serves California's 20th congressional district in the U.S. House of Representatives. His district includes Monterey, San Benito counties, and parts of Santa Cruz and Santa Clara counties. First elected in 2016, he is now serving his third term in Congress. He currently serves on the House Committee on Ways and Means, the House Committee on Agriculture, we're glad to hear that, and the House Committee of Armed Services. And he is also the Chief Deputy Whip for the Democratic majority on the powerful House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. And Congressman, I was told I would be remiss with all those other great credentials, that if we failed to point out there was another congressman who also hit a home run in the Congressional All-Star last week, I wouldn't be doing my job. And I Googled that just to make sure, and it turns out you also hit two-run triples. So not only do you still hit with power, you hustle, and we appreciate how hard you work and hustle on behalf of our district. So with that, Congressman, welcome, and you're on.
I appreciate that, Dennis. Thank you very much. And hopefully everybody can hear me well, and there's no technical issues. You guys have been doing a great job. Dennis, thanks for that introduction. Besides the part on the baseball game, which we lost, unfortunately, despite my effort, it was still a hell of a time. And
yeah, but three hits, Congressman. We're proud of you.
I'll take it. Trust me. I never thought I'd be doing anything in a major league stadium in front of 16,000 people, let alone try to hit a fastball. But everything worked out for me. Unfortunately, not for my team, but next year we'll get them. But thanks, Dennis. I appreciate that introduction. And obviously, thanks for all you do, not just for our community, but thank you for what you do, Dennis Donahue, for the future of our agriculture. And obviously, I want to thank CSUMB and the Growers Shippers Association Foundation for their work and with this seminar in highlighting and advancing our agriculture. And it's a great opportunity for me to be here with our guest to moderate this session of this seminar. So thank you very much. What a wonderful conversation we were just privy to in seeing and hearing and feeling the friendship, Secretary Vilsack and former Representative Sam Farr, two people who truly understand and not just the USDA, not just what it means to fund the USDA, but the effects of USDA on our communities, not just here on the Central Coast, but literally throughout the nation. And I feel very fortunate serving in Congress with a Secretary of Agriculture that really has that understanding of the importance of rural communities, not just to our food security, but to who we are as a nation. And all too often, and unfortunately, they can be, and I can tell you, and Secretary Vilsack will tell you, they feel forgotten at times. And so I do believe it's our responsibility in Congress, but also as a member of this country, to ensure that we continue to highlight the role of people and communities in our rural areas and for what they do for all of us in urban areas and all across that country. So like I said, I think that conversation was a small insight into the sentiment that Secretary Vilsack has for how important the role of our rural communities have, like I said, in our nation. And so it was great to hear about what the USDA is doing. And let me tell you, they are doing a heck of a lot when it comes to our agriculture, when it comes to our people in agriculture, from our farmers to our farm workers, to our producers, to our ranchers, and so on and so forth. What they're doing to suppress and prevent forest fires, what USDA is doing to bolster our food security through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and what they're doing to develop strategies to incentivize and reward a climate smart agriculture. Now, some of those things include what the USDA has recently announced when it comes to emergency funding for specialty crop producers, including a $100 million for specialty crop block grant programs and up to $20 million for organic cost share assistance, including assistance to producers who are transitioning to organic. With that type of funding that we're also going to get from the American Rescue Plan, the USDA recently announced $650 million for pandemic response and safety grants to support food processors, distributors, farmers markets, and producers in their response to COVID-19, including covering the cost of measures to protect workers from the virus. Now, the USDA also announced $700 million for the Farm and Food Worker Relief Grant Program, which will provide relief payments to frontline farm workers, as we know they were during the pandemic. They stepped up when we were telling people to stay home. Our farm workers did the opposite and actually went to work, providing us with the food security. This $700 million would provide those farm workers with expenses incurred during the pandemic, including the cost of personal protective equipment, dependent care, and expenses associated with quarantining and testing. Now, in Congress, we're playing our role too, I'm proud to say, and we're hoping what we're doing is putting forward legislation that helps the USDA with these programs, which helps the USDA in investments for these programs that we talked about. Now, obviously, we were so lucky to have someone like Sam Farr, not only as our representative prior to my time, but also he had a key position, as you heard. He was chairman of the House Ag Appropriations Committee. And so we were able to work with Sam to basically get the investment that we need in our agriculture here in this community. I'm trying to fill those big shoes that Sam had in ways that I am basically working with the House Appropriations Committee to make sure that they continue to not just focus on agriculture, which they do, but focus on our agriculture here on the Central Coast. That's specialty crops, our specialty crops, and the research that's so necessary for our specialty crops. So much so that when I first got to Congress, I started the Ag Research Caucus, a bipartisan caucus with my co-chair, Republican Rodney Davis from Illinois. And I tell you, because of that partnership, Rodney's also on the Ag Committee, we were able to secure in this year's appropriations bill $450 million for Agriculture and Food Research Initiative, otherwise known as AFRI, which is the nation's leading competitive grants program for ag sciences. That funding that we got is $15 million higher than that last year's enacted level. Now, Rep. Davis and I were also able to secure $2 million in funding for the first time ever to build out the planning and management structure of a program called the Agricultural Advanced Research and Development Authority, otherwise known for short as AGARDA, a bunch of acronyms in the USDA and throughout our bureaucracy, as you know. But what AGARDA does, and what I've consistently fought for ever since it was first authorized in the 2018 Farm Bill, is provide these high reward research grants, which I think are necessary, especially for research on specialty crop mechanization that we really need, especially here on the Central Coast, to be competitive in the 21st century. Now, also in the House Appropriations Bill, we were able to secure $14 million for the Minor Crop Pest Management Program. That's known as IR4, the IR4 project. Now, this is a program at the USDA that helps specialty crop producers better manage destructive weeds, insects, and plant disease threats that we see so often in our specialty crops. And that will also include help for the impatiens necrotic spot virus, otherwise known as INSV, that we're experiencing here on the Central Coast. So that's the type of funding that I'm continuing to try to secure that I believe is necessary to support activities to mitigate those stressors. And I will also be prioritizing that type of funding as we work to pass a final appropriations bill with our colleagues in the United States Senate, the bill that the secretary talked about as well. Now, as that's going on with our funding for our agriculture for the appropriations bill, as you've heard recently, we're also working on a major infrastructure bill, a bill that will invest billions in our infrastructure, not just for our roads, bridges, tunnels, that hard infrastructure, but yes, also dealing with ag research, dealing with ag trade, dealing with lands conservation and forestry. And of course, as you heard from the conversation prior to this, something that's very important, rural broadband. Now, look, as we work to pass that major piece of legislation, there are many members in Congress on both sides of the aisle that will continue to ensure that there is this type of investment in our infrastructure for our constituents, for our values, and for our agriculture. It's important not just for the security of our local economies, it's important, it's invaluable for the food security of our nation. Now, on the Central Coast, our farmers and farm workers lead the way when it comes to ag research. I think we know that, something we're continuing to support in Congress, as I've talked about. But what we're also seeing is it right here, take place right here in that ag research station, the Ag Research Service station that we see in Salinas with that new building, which will hopefully be appropriately named after Sam Farr. But you can tell we are ahead of the game here on the Central Coast when it comes to ag research, when it comes to sustainable agriculture, when it comes to technology and precision farming, which I believe is the pathway to sustainable agriculture. So important that we continue to have that type of research when it comes to thinking about how we farm, when it comes to protecting our farm workers, especially as they work under hotter and drier conditions. That's a great thing about people in agriculture, if you ask me, and why we're doing everything we can to support them. People in agriculture, I don't care what level you work at in agriculture, but I believe the people in agriculture absolutely embody the attitude of our nation, that they're always having to pivot in the face of the many challenges that they endure. They have to adapt to survive. They have to change to succeed. That's why it's important that we do everything we can in Congress to make sure they have the support to do that pivoting, to provide the support necessary and the investment necessary so that they can change in order to succeed and survive. We're with that attitude. That's the attitude we have to have in Congress, especially with the next farm bill that's going to be right around the corner so that we can have that type of investment. So that's why these types of conversations are so important, so that we can hear from farmers, we can hear from farm workers, we can hear from researchers, so that we in Congress know what we can do to support our agriculture. So I look forward to this conversation that we're going to have right now, and I get to introduce to you a couple of panelists that are going to be part of that conversation. The first person that's going to be with us is Dr. Spiro Stefano. Dr. Stefano is the administrator of the Economic Research Service. Dr. Stefano provides leadership and guidance for the agency's research, analytical, and technical operations. Since 2015, the doctor has been a professor of economics in Food and Resource Economics Department at the University of Florida. Go Gators. His research activities address themes of competitiveness and growth and related policy implications. Welcome, Dr. Stefano. Next, we also have Jesus Mendoza Jr. Jesus is the regional administrator for the Food and Nutrition Service for our Western region. Mr. Mendoza has held this position since May of 2014. He oversees 15 nutrition assistance programs, including our California program, and he works to maintain the integrity, the accessibility, and the nutritional quality of those programs. Now, before joining FNS, Mr. Mendoza held roles with the International Planned Parenthood, the World Wildlife Fund, the Peace Corps, and the United States Army. Clearly, he brings a wide breadth of experience to this conversation today. Now, also we have Mr. Jeff Yasui. Jeff is the regional director of USDA's Risk Management Agency, the office which administers and oversees federal crop insurance activities in California and several other Western states. For the past 10 years, Jeff has been the director with RMA, and previously he worked for the USDA's Farm Service Agency. We are delighted, we are lucky to have these esteemed panelists with us here today, especially after following that wonderful conversation that we just heard from the secretary and our former representative. So with that, welcome. And now I'm going to move on to the questions that I get to ask as the moderator of our panelists. And so I'll start off with Dr. Stefano. Dr. Stefano, let's continue the trend of talking about and highlighting USDA. Talk to us what the USDA is doing. What's their focus right now when it comes to the crops that we have here? Now, as you know, we got plenty of them, plenty of specialty crops, but what type of research and what type of focus does USDA have when it comes to our specialty crops that we are so proud of here on the Central Coast?
Well, great. Thanks for inviting me here, Congressman, and pleased to be with you folks. Well, in the Economic Research Service, we focus on a lot of the research and analysis of specialty crops, as well as all other aspects of agriculture, food, the environment, rural America. Now, we do have work that we've been doing historically on organic food and local farming systems. We focus on import competition. For example, we have ERS has a vegetable and pulses team that leads in assessing the impact of import competition on domestic markets, including prices. And as you know, over the last 2 decades, the volume of fresh vegetables imported by the United States, primarily from Mexico and Canada, was nearly 200%. So we've been focused a lot on these kind of specialty crop import competition issues. We have a lot of leafy greens related work. We put out multiple data products that focus on vegetable and leafy greens. We see over the last decade, the change. We have production is down for lettuce by 20%. Imports are up by 19%. We have exports down, and this average price has been going up. It's gone up almost 50% between 2008-10 and 2018-2020. We look at fruit and tree nut outlook, and for example, strawberries. California is a huge strawberry shipper, and shipments have been up 13% compared to a year ago for California strawberries. California accounts for 90% of all the strawberries. Although you mentioned I came from Florida, Florida is very proud of their strawberry production for a brief window. But both California and Florida are facing competition from Mexico within their season. So this is a big concern. We see an evolving picture here for strawberries as well as for tomatoes. We also look at citrus outlook, grape outlook, and it's been a great year for California table grape production. Forecast is up. It's up almost 9% from 2020, even in the face of the drought and high heat conditions in both states. Tangerine crop was quite robust, but California did experience declines in orange, grapefruit, lemon production this season, with about a 3% drop. We work closely with NASS to collect these data and analyze them. Sometimes we work with universities to help us fill in the gaps where the data aren't. The Ag Research Service also does a lot of research on lettuce and strawberries, and I'll defer to them for the kind of work that they do, but they're focusing on work like genetics and breeding, looking at soil, pest management issues in organic vegetable and strawberry production systems, and also managing plant pathogens for strawberry and vegetable production systems. So the plant protection aspect looms large in their agenda. So I'll leave it there for now, unless you have a more specific question about this.
No, I appreciate that. I also just want to mention one thing that you highlighted, which is understandable, especially since you're at the University of Florida. And trust me, I think the SEC has a lot on us when it comes to football over Pac-12. But as someone from the Central Coast, obviously, I'm very biased about our Central Coast crops as well as our producers. And we actually are working very closely in Mexico, as you know, and that's obviously a regional issue. I think you'll have to admit when it comes to the producers in Florida and Georgia that don't necessarily have as close of a connection to the producers in Mexico as well. And that's clearly something that obviously we're taking into account and discussing with my colleagues on the Ag Committee from Georgia, from Florida, to try to overcome those issues as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But I also want to talk about something that's been brought up in the news quite a bit. kind of going away from our fruits and vegetables, looking at the livestock markets. And like I said, I know this is being hit in the news lately. Talk to us a little bit about this market transparency and price discovery issues in the livestock markets that we're hearing about. If you think can you hit on that a little bit?
Sure. Especially hog and pork markets, we saw here in 2021, there is an extraordinary level of consumer demand there. We have two things going on. We look at some supply side related issues, but there's also the demand side, right? The pandemic brought huge demand shocks here. And so we saw a substantial increase in consumer demand for hog and pork prices. Hog and pork has driven prices up. Another contributing factor to higher pork prices this year are lower supplies of slaughter hogs. We had problems with slaughterhouses, so a lot of them have bounced back. But we call these thin markets where there aren't a lot of players on both sides, or on one side versus another side, and trying to figure out what the prices are. Now we see these prices. USDA's mandatory price reporting system requires processors to report prices twice a day. And for example, pork processors must report to USDA twice daily prices paid to producers for hogs under 5 different pricing arrangements and different ownership categories. So we have also lower pork supplies coming in. Fewer hogs are due to disease problems from last winter, some lower returns. So we have two sides of a market going here. The question is, in forecasting, where is the meat and poultry type market going to land? There's been a lot of focus on concentration. There's also focus on imports, and so there's several factors going into kind of determining what the prices we see in the supermarket. So it's kind of a dicey issue to try to get to definitively, but it's kind of an evolving story here that we're trying to keep track of, trying to see if we can start to tease out some trends.
Great, and I thank you. And just to let you know, I can see my computer's getting a little fuzzy, so I might have to switch off the video just to let you know as well. But I think I'm going to move on to Mr. Mendoza. Thank you, Dr. Stefano. Mr. Mendoza, can you talk to us about the pandemic? Let's kind of hit that. Obviously, that's something that we've all gone through in this country, across our globe. But what I saw and what I was one of the things I was proud of in our efforts to deal with the pandemic, and one of the pivots that we did, is our expansion of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and how much that was really a cornerstone in our relief efforts during the pandemic. And so, Mr. Mendoza, I was wondering if you can talk about how that impacted participation in SNAP, but also beyond SNAP, what else is the USDA doing in its collaboration with local agencies to provide that food assistance to food insecure families?
Thank you, Congressman, and good afternoon, everyone. And as you mentioned, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as USDA, and just for the public here in California, it is known as Call Fresh here in California, that program. So yeah, it is the nation's first line of defense against hunger, and it works to provide monthly benefit allotments through electronic benefit card. It works just as a debit card in that. And we pivot pretty rapidly once we became aware of the pandemic. One of the things that we did, and that was Congress approved us, is to provide a emergency allotments, meaning that every household who was a SNAP recipient was able to receive up to the maximum of the benefits that they qualified for each of the month. And we did this because we know that as school starting closing, we knew that the children was going to be staying home. Parents may have to be at home. So there was going to be a higher need for food, nutritious food on that part of it. Then the other part that came out of that, it was to do a 50% increase over the SNAP benefit allotments to help assist household even further to do that part of it. The other thing that we did, and we expanded this very rapidly, going from a 5-state pilot program to a nationwide rollout program, was to do the online shopping so that households who were SNAP recipients had the same opportunity that any other household will be able to purchase their food online. There, especially families who had children, they will not be able to take their children to the store or care. It provided the safety, the health safety that they needed to be able to do that on online shopping, to do that as part of it. And that's in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Here, we provided a lot of waivers to the state agency. And here in California, it is administered by the California Department of Social Services, for example, so that people can apply it online over the phone. They didn't have to be in person. They could do just the telephonic signatures. And for the recertification period, we extended the recertification period so that people didn't have to do it every 3 or 6 months. They could do it for a 12-month period. All of these waivers that we provided, additional resources, were very helpful to the parents so that they can expand or have a better food budget than they were had, as many households were experiencing unemployment. They were also paying rent, or their income got shortened. So all of this was a tremendous assistance. In addition to that, the ones that we did, as schools were getting closed because of the pandemic, we also allow parents to either pick up meals at the school or to do the grab and go. Many schools came out with a lot of innovative ways to continue to feed children, and some of them provide like a week worth of food with recipes so that parents could prepare nutritious meals at home, because part of the other incentive of the SNAP program is not only to provide benefits, but also to provide education on how we can eat healthier. And so that part of it was there for them. In the WIC program, the Women, Infant, and Children program, we also kind of went into the online shopping. You already heard the secretary mention about increasing the vouchers to be able to purchase more fresh fruits and vegetables in the food program. He also mentioned the assistance through the emergency food assistance to provide food banks with $100 million so they can expand their infrastructure, either to freezers or trucks or whatever they had, so that they can store and have more food available to distribute to their community organizations, pantries, soup kitchens.
Mendoza,
so I'll stop there.
There's a lot, and that's a great answer, and I really appreciate that. We're running a little short on time, and I want to get Mr. Yasui in here for his specialty. But thank you for what you guys are doing at USDA, and thank you for what you did during the pandemic and what we will continue to do outside of the pandemic in order to provide that food security through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and other food programs from the USDA. Thank you. Mr. Yasui, thank you for coming here at the last minute. I really appreciate that. Talk to us about crop insurance for specialty crops, if you could. That's something that specialty crop producers, at least here on Central Coast, don't normally take part in, unfortunately. We're trying to work on that. We're trying to have more conversations about that. Can you go into federal crop insurance program and what specialty crops are covered and how our producers can acquire insurance if necessary for their specialty crops?
Yes, I can, Congressman. Thank you. And real quickly, I want to get to what the secretary said. USDA is a wonderful place to work at. I'm a career employee, came off a farm, went into USDA, went to college, went back to the farm, went into USDA, made it a career. Don't regret a moment of it. I also believe I'm one of those aging workforce, I think is how he put it. I'm part of that aging workforce. Crop insurance. Do we offer crops, especially crops? You know, in essence, every single specialty crop can get coverage under our whole farm policy. So we can look at your whole farm revenue and determine a policy from that by looking at your tax records in the past and seeing how they compare to your current year. In your district, we cover apiculture, apples, avocados, apricots, cherries, citrus, grapes is the big one, onions, prunes, strawberries, tomatoes, and walnuts. It's a very affordable program. Contact an agent to look into it. 61% on average of your premium is actually subsidized by the government. The other good thing about the government looking at this, we're not profit oriented. We're not a crop insurance company. We set our rates to break even over the long term without consideration of the subsidy. So really the subsidy just helps you. If you have average losses over the years, you should probably end up with the subsidy every year as a, I'm not gonna say a profit, but it's really a discount to your premium. So it is a good program. It's very affordable. It's very flexible. It covers, well, every crop if you want to look at whole farm. But if you want an individual policy, other than the ones that were not named by myself just a second ago, Farm Service Agency, of which has offices in Salinas and Hollister, they have a NAP program, Non-Insured Assistance Program, which was developed about 20 years ago. And unfortunately, I think I was one of the developers of it. It goes way back with Congressman Farr. And that program is available for non-insurable crops, and it somewhat mimics a crop insurance program. But this crop insurance is not your regular insurance program. It's a lot different. And the big difference is highly subsidized. Companies aren't going to compete based on rates. We provide the same rates, yields, all those factors. So they compete on service, and that can only be good for the growers.
Great. I appreciate that. So kind of tying in a couple of, for lack of better words, the disasters that we've been dealing with over the past couple years, and we'll probably have to continue to deal with, be it the pandemic or be it wildfires. Now, obviously, as you know, we were able to get in WIP Plus and reinstitute that with this recent budget, with the recent legislation. Talk to us about how wildfires in California, how they've impacted specialty crop growers, especially recently.
Yeah, grapes is the big one. Grapes was extremely susceptible to smoke taint. So it wasn't necessarily the direct burning of the grapes on the vines. It was the smoke taint that infiltrated the skins and then tainted the flavor, taste of the grapes. We covered that. And that there were some difficulties in administering it because we had such an influx of losses. So the scene behind me is the Santa Rosa fire. It was coming over the hills, and it, as you recall, went into an active housing area. And as we've seen from other wildfires, they've also hit housing areas or residences. But it's been the wildfires. So wildfires was the big one. In 2020, for the wildfire losses, we paid out, I got to look at my numbers here because it's a big number, $235 million in indemnity statewide. In your district, we paid out $36 million, still a very significant amount. It was the $235 million was a single California. And so it was huge. There was a lot of administrative issues we had to deal with just because of volume. But we got through them, and hats off to the growers for their cooperation, our stakeholders, UC Davis, the CDFA, everybody that helped out in getting this process done. Our crop insurance companies worked day and night to get it done, and they did. So we were very happy about that.
Great. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for working with our producers so closely here on the Central Coast. I know you've worked very closely with Ria Mehta in my office and basically being that bridge between you and our producers and getting them the insurance that's necessary. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, let me just switch. We actually have been informed that we have a little bit more time than when we were told. So unfortunately for you, but fortunately for our audience, we get to ask a little bit more questions of you. Talk to me about the future of USDA. And what I mean by that, let's focus on the people in the audience right now. And so I want to ask a question to everybody. what you think, and I think we heard a little bit of this from Secretary Vilsack earlier today, but what sort of experience are you looking for? Is the USDA looking for in hiring interns or entry-level employees? And what should the students really start to consider in their type of work for USDA? And what jobs, I think, are most in demand, or what jobs are kind of open right now at the USDA? I'll go ahead and start with Mr. Stefano, if you could address that.
Sure, thanks for the opportunity. Well, we are a research service, so we tend to hire folks with higher degrees, masters and PhDs. And so, we are an organization that's very demand driven. We study the problems that are relevant right now. Part of being relevant is being timely. And we carry out objective research and analysis as we go through this. So, we have no opportunity here to promote a particular initiative or to refute it. We just say, this is what it is. We are very data driven. We focus on the evidence. We collect lots of data. 15% of my budget goes to buying data and building databases. And that's what we use to do our analysis. So if you like to work with data, you like to do data analytics, you like to do the economic analysis and confront the theory with the data, you come to us. We are a very team-oriented place to work. So that's what we're looking for. We want folks to come with us who want to be part of an organization. I want to contribute to a team. We like to see folks come in with a global mindset that is not international as such, but they can see how what they do contributes to the larger agenda. And so those are the kinds of things we like. And lastly, we want folks who can take on a job, do it well, deliver it on time. We want you to be the mailman. Those kind of folks will always succeed at the Economic Research Service.
Understood completely. I think we want those qualities in all of our employees, and it's good to know that the USDA as a foundation demands that, expects that, and I believe should have that, especially from their employees. So thank you for saying that. Mr. Mendoza, what do you feel is important for anybody looking to get a job at USDA?
Well, USDA is a very large organization as a department. There's 29 agencies with a lot of fields within USDA, but for the Food and Nutrition Service, and one of the things that we will look is good interpersonal skills and communication skills, because we don't manage our programs directly. We work through others. We work through our state agencies, the schools, food banks. So it's important to build relationships with them, to be able to communicate our rules and regulations and policies in a way that they could understand it, that the public could understand that, and put it in a simplified way. So those will be about the top three. Commitment to public service. So that's the one. Within Food and Nutrition Service, we have certain fields. We have people who do financial management, accounting, who deal with all the grants that we send to the state agencies and how we fund them. So we do hire, we have positions right now on the accountant side. We also hire people who are nutritionists or have a dietitian background. So those are the ones that help us implement or see the menus of the schools that we provide, the school meals. But people who have a general background, a social science network, that they can work well with other ones, that they can interpret our regulations and apply them to different scenarios to help the program operators solve problems. That applies to everyone. We have people with very different backgrounds and education that come and work. They don't necessarily have to come to us knowing what a school lunch means or a week program. We have a development program to training about the program, how it works. And as you know, Congress reauthorizes the program every 5 years and they make changes. So every 5 years, we have to make sure that we retrain our staff on what those changes are, what it will be. So those are the kind of skills that we look in, people who are open-minded, committed to public service, good interpersonal skills who want to work with others.
That's great. And I think there are a few members of Congress that could take that teaching from the USDA on some of our food programs. So hopefully you go up to Capitol Hill as well and explain it to them too. We're doing our best. I appreciate that. Mr. Yasui, what are you seeing in regards to the type of USDA jobs that are most in demand at this point?
You know, actually, Larry, with the service agencies, the farm service agencies, NRCS and RD, and to a lesser degree to RMA because we're not direct face-to-face, we have a lot of opportunities. These agencies have a lot of opportunities for at entry level and at higher levels. You know, I started at an entry level with Farm Service Agency back when it was a different named agency, and it is a good opportunity. They're with the service agencies. You don't need to come in with a specialty. You could come in and they're going to teach you or show you what you need to know to be successful. So what we look for is creative thinkers, people that are motivated, team oriented. You know, we provide additional opportunities for disabled veterans and disabled applicants. We look at a wide range of skill sets, but we do want, you know, I do reflect what the other two have said also. We want motivation, we want team, we want people that are focused, I want creative thinkers. I like out of the box thinkers. So I really want people to grow. I want them to grow so much that if they leave me, I'm proud of them for leaving me. So that's what we look for. If anyone out there, the students are interested, our jobs are posted on usajobs.gov. So it's a resource that they should use as a search.
Outstanding. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Yasui. I appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for talking about the very foundational skills that I think people need to work at USDA, to work in our federal government. And I hope that they have that desire to serve the public when they put in their application. I think that's very, very important, no matter what type of job you get in USDA or in the federal government. So thank you all for that. Let's see, right now, we just got a couple minutes left, and I'm going to turn to the questions from the audience. The first one that came in early on in this time that we had, and feel free to just pipe in. I'm going to open it up to all of you. Does the USDA support any programs to help educate producers and consumers on the benefits of smaller scale farming, gardening, and farmers markets? Go ahead, Dr. Stefano. I see you wanting to talk, so I'm going to call on you.
Well, we do provide information to help support folks trying to figure out what's going to be profitable. We provide the market type of information, you know, where the demand is for products if you want to get into these smaller scale operations. Part of we do have a local farmer type of a program, and understanding what the markets are for local farming is important, local farm products. So those are some of the things we try to provide, basically the economic intelligence that folks may need if they want to jump into this type of activity.
Great, good. Mr. Mendoza or Mr. Yasui, you have anything to say on that?
You know, one that they could check would be the Cooperative Extension Service. They have farm advisors. They're a really good resource to visit with. They work with UC Davis and the other educational institutes. So I would say Cooperative Extension Service is a good avenue to look also. And they're within USDA.
Great. And Mr. Mendoza.
Yes, we do offer grants, especially to help bring small farmers to bring their produce to farmers markets, either provide grants for education, how to establish it, or provide the electronic benefit device, or how sometimes they work depending on the farmers market. Sometimes they do provide coins instead of it so that people can do their shopping. So we do have a lot of information on that. How do they can become small farmers and bring their produce to the farmers market? They can associate with the farmers market or grants to get some of the equipment so that they can need that for transactions. And we also provide it on the recipient side so that they know how to be smart shoppers at farmers markets. So we do it on both ends.
Great, great. Now, Mr. Yasui, you mentioned one of the qualities you like to see in your employees and people who work at USDA, and I think people who work in government or any other thing, is that ability to think outside the box. Along those lines, another question we got was, what kinds of innovation and technology is being utilized in your specific agency? You think you have some ideas on that?
Well, I know we're using a lot of the newer software programs like Tableau to look at statistics and other tools that we have, but we also look at imagery, satellite imagery. We're looking at AQI indexing. We're looking at whatever is out there to try to be creative, try to be to serve the growers, to make crop insurance a little bit easier to manage. And we want people to think about that. I'm talking to your students. We don't want someone that can just read regulations and then interpret it. I want somebody that can read the regulations, interpret, and think outside the box. Think, what can I do with that? How can I make it right? I don't want someone to say, okay, here's the problem. This is what the book says to fix it. I want them to say, well, this is what the book says. How can I fix it and reinterpret it so it can be fixed? Let's go a step further, and that's what I look for.
Great, good. Look, we just got a few minutes here, and I kind of want to wrap it up on this last question that I got. Students want to hear about you, to be frank. What was your path? What was your thinking outside the box? How did you get to where you are at this point, in the sense of what was your career path, and were you a business? Were you a science major? Just give us a little sense of that. We got a few minutes for each panelist, and so I'm going to start with, not going from front to back, but I'm going to go back to forward to the front. Mr. Yasui, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are, and what are some of the qualities that got you to where you're at?
Well, I was a farm boy. Came off of a farm in San Joaquin County, went to college, went to UC Davis, was over 3 years of electrical engineer.
Huh.
And then I decided my dad's gonna make me go back to the farm. So I switched over to an ag degree, went back to the farm for a few years, had a big loss. I saw what stress it put on my father as a farmer. And we had a long talk about it. And he had other businesses he could switch to. And I told him, look, if you don't want to farm, I could take another path. I have my degree. I'll find something. It's not a big deal. So I did. I reached out to, at the time, as the predecessor agency for FSA. I contacted them. And that's something you all can do as students. Contact the agencies, talk to them. And they might have positions, or they may have something, but get your face in there, get your name in there, let them hear you. And that's what I did. And then I was hired as a temporary employee. I was then recruited to become a manager, but you could also apply to be a manager. It was a little bit different system then. And I became a manager through Farm Service Agency, and then moved up the food chain. And then at some point in time, I jumped over to Risk Management Agency. But what you could do is, if you have a strong idea, make sure you're heard. Also, understand that there are some things that can't be changed. I'm not saying, but don't, make yourself heard with the understanding of accepting that. Don't fight it till it buries you, I guess is one way of saying it. But if you look at most of the leadership in USDA, and we have some excellent leaders here, they will guide you, they will mentor you, they want you to be successful. So that was my path. And after 35-6 years of USDA work, I guess, like the secretary said, I'm part of that aging workforce. So I will be moving out at some point in time. Other people will be moving in, and it'll be good for their opportunities. So do that. But I think the biggest thing I could say, Congressman, is make sure you understand you have a voice and use that voice.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you for that. Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you. I'm also a career employee. I started as a program specialist in the National School Lunch Program. I think one of the things that helped me succeed is being able to work internally with my supervisors, with my managers, in getting their mentoring, communicating with them, and providing them ideas on how to problem solve, how to think things when we get to a roadblock. Well, how can we do it? What are some of the things that we haven't thought about it, or what are some of the flexibilities that we have? But also at the same time, working outside with the program operators. It's a two-side with them, being able to problem solve with them, to provide them ideas and suggestions on how they can move forward, to gather information from different sources so that then I can provide what are some of the best practices that they could have. So how do I make myself useful within the organization as well outside of the organization, and bring that together, always thinking that I'm here to help the program. And USDA, I had been lucky enough, and from what I'm hearing, I don't doubt that within USDA, we have an amazing set of managers and supervisors that are very dedicated to make the employees successful. Like we said, we hire employees to succeed, and we want them to succeed. We want to provide them the tools. So communication with the supervisor can help them to realize what their goals are. Some people may want to be managers. Some people may just want to be good in the position they are, and there's nothing wrong with that, as you know, but it's good to communicate that so that then the manager knows and can help you achieve those goals. As a manager, I always thought that my goal was to help my employees succeed. If they succeed, then I'm successful.
Nice. Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Mr. Stefano.
Well, I grew up in this small farming town called Washington, D.C. I was born 2 blocks west of the White House, and I took an undergraduate degree in anthropology. So I kind of came to this from a social science perspective, but I came looking for agriculture and agricultural economics. And I made my way eventually out to a small California town called Davis, where I got my PhD, and I followed a path differently from Mr. Yasui and Mr. Mendoza. I went into a faculty position. So I was a professor for nearly 40 years before I came to USDA, before I came to federal service. And my mantra has always been, do what you want to do. Identify what you want to do, not what you want to be. All right? And you can be many things to do certain things that you want to do. So try to keep that focus, and you'll find many creative ways to pursue a career. There are 100,000 different positions, 100,000 people working in USDA. Lots of opportunities, lots of ways to serve. And as Mr. Mendoza said, if you want to be a manager, best quality of being a manager, as he mentioned, is you have to be able to take pleasure in seeing others succeed. It's not about you. And so those are kind of frameworks to keep in mind, but focus on what you want to do and what you can do well.
Outstanding. So just to sum it up, I think Mr. Yasui said basically when you're working there, raise your voice, be able to let people know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and be clear about that. Mr. Mendoza said, communicate with your team, communicate with your managers, make sure that once again, your voice is heard and you have that form of communication. And then I think Mr. Stefano left us with basically do what you want to do, not what you want to be. And basically kind of have that desire from inside you, directing you as to the work that you want to do in USDA, which I think are all excellent forms of advice as to what you want to do, not just in the USDA, not just in government, but in life. So I truly appreciate that and all of your work helping us here on the Central Coast, helping us across our nation, and helping our agriculture when it comes to, like I said, our food security, which is ultimately our nation's security. So, gentlemen, thank you for this time. I'm going to turn it back over to Dennis Donahue. But to know how much your work means to us here on the Central Coast, and boy, do I look forward to working with you to advocate for my farmers, my farm workers, my ranchers, my producers here on the Central Coast as we go forward, and I can help continue to do my job as the representative for this area. So, Dennis, back to you.
Jimmy, thank you. And thank you to all the panelists for a terrific conversation. And I'd like to turn it over to Lorri Koster, who is the president of the Grover Shipper Association Foundation, for some closing comments. Lorri?
On behalf of the Grover Shipper Association Foundation, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. This is our 15th year of partnering with CSUMB on Greater Vision, and we had over 350 participants today, so that's very exciting. What a pleasure it was to have USDA Secretary Vilsack, Sam Farr, and Congressman Panetta, as well as the panelists from USDA sharing so much insight. You can see the USDA has a lot of diverse career opportunities, so we encourage you to look into them. Thank you for joining us.